My husband's had an affair with my little sister, a story of heartbreak and healing. My life changed in a way I never imagined possible, and the pain still feels like a heavy weight on my chest. My husband and I had only been married for 2 weeks when I learned something so devastating it shattered the world I thought we were building together. The man I trusted with my heart, my 27-year-old husband, had been sleeping with my little sister behind my back. My sister is only 17. Yes, she is of legal age, but in my eyes she is still a child, my baby sister. The innocence I saw in her eyes, the girl I used to tuck into bed and comfort during storms, now felt like a stranger. To think that she was involved with my husband, the man who promised to love and protect me, made my heart break in ways I could never describe. It all started when my parents called me to their house a few days ago. Their voices were heavy with worry as they explained what they had discovered. They told me they had installed a monitoring app on my sister's phone because they sensed something was wrong. It was their way of trying to protect her. What they found was heartbreaking. Messages, photos, and conversations that confirmed the worst. My husband was the father of my sister's unborn child. The news hit me like a hurricane. My sister was 1 month pregnant, but she refused to say who the father was. I remember sitting in their living room, the cold air around me making it hard to breathe. My parents' faces were grave, and when they showed me the messages, my hands shook. There was no doubt. I saw it with my own eyes. My sister, sitting beside me, kept saying she was sorry over and over. Tears streamed down her face as she begged for forgiveness. But no words could erase what had happened. The betrayal cut deeper than any blade. How could they both do this to me? How could the 2 people I love the most conspire to break me? Like this? My husband, on the other hand, seemed like a broken man. When I confronted him, he admitted everything. His voice was quiet, filled with regret. He said he made a mistake, a terrible one, and that he wanted us to go to counseling. He wanted to stay married, to fix what he had destroyed. I looked at him, searching for something, some flicker of the man I married. But all I saw was shame and desperation. I didn't say much. The words I spoke felt heavy but certain. I told him I was filing for divorce. I was not going to change my mind. I knew in that moment that my life would never be the same. The trust was gone, and so was the man I thought I knew. As for my sister, I was not sure what to think or feel. Anger, confusion, sadness, they all swirled inside me. I honestly did not know if I could ever speak to her again. That night, I sat alone in the dark of our empty apartment, the silence deafening. The space that was supposed to be a home now felt like a prison. Memories of the last few weeks flashed through my mind. Our wedding day, the promises we made, the plans for the future. It all seemed so distant and unreal now. I thought about my sister's face when she said she was sorry, how small and scared she looked. I thought about how she had been so young when this began, only 15. I kept wondering how something so wrong had been allowed to grow in the shadows. My parents' disappointment was clear too, but they were trying to hold their family together. Mom and Dad sat with me for hours, comforting me, trying to help me make sense of the chaos. They were torn between anger and sadness, trying to support me while also worrying about my sister. My dad, a deeply religious man, kept saying this was a test, something we had to endure. Mom, always gentle and kind, just kept hugging me, telling me it was not my fault. Neither of them knew exactly what to do, but they promised to stand by me. The next day felt like a fog. I went through the motions at work, but my mind was elsewhere. I kept replaying every conversation, every smile, every moment, trying to find clues I might have missed. How could I have been so blind? How did my husband hide this from me so well? I started to notice little things, like how he looked guilty when I called him during the day, or how his texts were fewer and less warm. But I had brushed those aside, telling myself I was just being paranoid. Now I realized it was all real, at AITA's home. I packed up the things that belonged to him, his clothes, his toothbrush, the small things that made him part of my life. Each item I put in the box felt like a small victory over the pain he caused. My heart ached for my sister, too. Despite everything, she was still my little sister. I knew she was scared and confused. Being pregnant at 17 is terrifying, and carrying a secret like that must have been unbearable. Yet, the way she had hidden it, the way she had betrayed me, left scars that might never heal. I remember the last time I saw her before everything came out. We were at a family dinner, laughing and joking like nothing was wrong. She looked happy, carefree, a reminder of how little I knew about the truth she was hiding. Now, she was a different person, lost and broken. She kept repeating how sorry she was, how she wished she could take it back. But some things cannot be undone. I spent hours staring out the window, trying to imagine what the future would hold. The house that was once filled with love now echoed with silence and pain. I knew I had to be strong for myself, but I also wondered how my family would survive this. The days after that felt like a nightmare I could not wake from. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces. My husband's regretful eyes, my sister's tear-streaked cheeks. The people I trusted the most had turned my world upside down. Despite the heartbreak, I refused to let this define me. I told myself I would find a way to heal, to rebuild my life without the man who betrayed me. I told myself that no matter how broken things seemed, I was stronger than this pain. But the hardest part was yet to come. I knew the truth was only beginning to unravel. My parents' discovery was just the surface of a deeper wound. As I sat, alone, clutching the phone with the messages still fresh in my mind, I realized that the path ahead would be difficult. There would be tears, anger, forgiveness, and tough decisions. I just hoped that somehow, through all the heartbreak, we could find a way forward, even if it meant walking separate roads. The morning after the confrontation was strangely quiet. The apartment felt emptier than usual, as if the walls themselves were mourning the loss of the trust that once filled the rooms. I woke up alone, a strange new reality settling over me, like a cold blanket. For the first time in a year, my husband was not beside me. The bed felt vast and hollow. It was surreal, almost like I was waiting for him to walk through the door, to explain everything away. But I knew that would never happen. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands trembling slightly, trying to steady my breathing. The weight of what I had learned was crushing, and the silence around me only made it louder. I wanted to scream, to cry, to do something, but all I could do was sit there and feel the heartbreak soak into my skin. I reached for my phone and saw a message from my sister. It was short but heavy with regret. I am so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I wish I could take it all back. I stared at the words, tears blurring my vision. How could I forgive this? How could I even face her? The love I had for her was tangled with anger and disbelief. She was still my sister, but the sister who betrayed me in the worst way imaginable. Later that day, my parents called again. Their voices were grave as they told me that the police had gotten involved. My sister had been taken in for questioning. She admitted that the relationship with my husband had started when she was only 15. She said it became physical when she was 16. Hearing that broke something deep inside me. How could this have gone on for so long without anyone noticing? The police also found inappropriate messages and photos on her phone that matched her story. It was undeniable evidence of a long and troubling history that neither I nor anyone else had known about. My husband, who was supposed to be a protector and partner, had been exploiting my sister's vulnerability for over a year. I felt sick to my stomach. That night, my soon-to-be ex-husband was arrested at his job. I could not believe it. The man I had married, the person I trusted most, was now facing serious consequences for what he had done. I was overwhelmed by a storm of emotions: relief, sorrow, anger, and a deep, aching sense of loss. For the first time since this nightmare began, I allowed myself to cry fully. I cried for the love that was lost, for the innocence stolen from my sister, and for the shattered dreams I once held dear. My parents were struggling too. My father, a man of strong faith, insisted that my sister keep the baby. He said it was their responsibility to face this together, to forgive and move forward as a family. His words were gentle but firm. He believed in redemption and second chances. My mother was quieter, her face drawn and tired. She thought my sister should have the right to choose what to do with her pregnancy. She did not want to pressure her one way or another, but wanted her to have the freedom to decide. The conflicting views created tension in our family. It was clear that healing would not be easy, nor would the path forward be smooth. Everyone was hurting, and no one had all the answers. I had already reached out to a lawyer, determined to move forward with an annulment. I wanted a clean break from the man who had destroyed my marriage and betrayed my trust so completely. I told the lawyer that I wanted no contact with him, no lingering ties or reminders. As I sat in the lawyer's office, hearing the legal terms and steps, I felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. It was a necessary step to reclaim my life, but it also meant fully acknowledging the end of something I had once dreamed would last forever. Despite my sister's many apologies, I knew she was still deeply confused. She told my parents and the counselors that she believed she was in love with my husband. That shocked me to my core. How could she think that after everything? How could she be caught in a web of feelings so tangled and wrong? The family counseling sessions had just begun, and they were emotional and difficult. We were all trying to figure out how to move forward, how to mend the broken pieces, and whether or not I could ever have any kind of relationship with my sister again. The counselor helped us explore our feelings, the pain, the anger, the sense of betrayal, but there were no quick answers or easy solutions. Every session was filled with raw honesty and tears. Sometimes the silence in the room said more than words ever could. I struggled to forgive. I struggled to understand how two people I loved so deeply could do something so hurtful. And yet, there was a small part of me that wanted to find a way to heal, to save my family in some form. But that path was uncertain, and for now, I was taking it one day at a time. Every morning, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. I was learning to live in a world that no longer felt safe or familiar. I tried to focus on my work, on the little things that gave me comfort: a warm cup of tea, the sun shining through the window, a good book. My friends reached out too. They listened to me, offered support, and reminded me that I was not alone. Their kindness was a small light in the dark days. The hardest moments were those when I thought about the future. What would happen to my sister and her baby? How would we move forward as a family? Could the trust ever be rebuilt? Or would this betrayal always define us? At night, I would sometimes wake up from nightmares, heart pounding, thinking I was back in that moment of discovery. The images of my sister and husband together haunted me, and I had to remind myself that I was safe now. My parents tried their best to keep the family together, but the truth was like a crack in the foundation. It could be patched, but it might never be completely whole again. Despite the pain and confusion, I was determined to survive, to find strength in the brokenness and hope in the healing. It would take time, and there would be days when the sorrow felt too heavy to bear. But I knew one thing for sure. I would never let this define who I was. I would not let their betrayal steal my future. The weeks that followed were some of the hardest I have ever lived through. The police investigation moved slowly but steadily. My sister had been cooperating, and the truth she told them was painful but necessary. She had been just a child when everything began, and the consequences of that made the betrayal even more unbearable. I could not stop thinking about how my husband had taken advantage of her youth and trust. The fact that he was older, in a position of power, made what he did unforgivable. The days were filled with family counseling sessions. which felt like walking through a minefield of emotions. Every conversation brought fresh wounds to the surface. My parents tried to mediate, balancing their roles as protectors and peacemakers, but sometimes it felt impossible to keep the peace. I remember one counseling session vividly. We sat in a circle in a small, cozy room, soft light filtering through the windows. The counselor asked us to share our feelings honestly, and when it was my turn, I found my voice shaking. "I don't know if I can forgive either of them," I said, my eyes fixed on the floor. My husband betrayed me. But my sister, she's still so young, and yet she hurt me in a way I never imagined. My sister looked down, her cheeks flushed with shame. "I was scared," she whispered. "I didn't know what to do. I thought, he cared for me. I didn't want to hurt you, I swear. I'm so sorry." The counselor nodded gently. "It is understandable to feel hurt and confused. Forgiveness is a process, not a single moment. You all have to find your own path forward." My heart ached as I looked at her. Could I ever truly forgive her? She was my little sister, but the innocence I had once seen in her was gone, replaced by a complex mix of guilt, fear, and pain. The pregnancy added another layer of difficulty. My sister's belly was just beginning to show, and I could see how scared she was. The thought of her carrying a child, especially under these circumstances, was almost too much to bear. My father's insistence that she keep the baby clashed with my mother's more compassionate approach. Mom wanted to give my sister control over her own body, believing it was her choice to make. The tension between my parents was real, and I often found myself caught in the middle, unsure which way to lean. One afternoon, I sat with my sister. In her small bedroom, the walls covered with posters and photos of happier times. The air smelled faintly of lavender, her favorite scent. We sat on her bed, awkward and quiet at first. "I don't know what to say," I finally admitted. "I don't know if I can forgive you, but I want to try." She looked up, her eyes glistening with tears. "Thank you. I don't deserve it, but I want to make things right." We talked for hours that day, not about the past, but about the future, about how she wanted to be a better person, how she hoped to find strength to raise this child with love and care, despite everything. It was a fragile beginning, a small step towards healing. Meanwhile, the legal process moved forward. I met with my lawyer again to discuss the annulment. She was kind but firm, explaining the paperwork and what to expect. I wanted to close this chapter as quickly as possible. "Want no contact with him," I said clearly. "I don't want to see or hear from him ever again." My lawyer nodded. "That is your right. We will make sure you are protected." Hearing those words gave me a small measure of comfort. It meant I could finally start to take control of my own life again. The night my husband was arrested felt like the moment everything shifted. I could barely sleep that night. The silence in the apartment was deafening, but it was a different kind of silence, one filled with the possibility of new beginnings, even if the pain was still fresh. Friends reached out with messages of support. They reminded me I was not alone. Their words were small beacons of light, guiding me through the darkness. One friend sent me a simple message. "You are stronger than you know. This does not define you." I clung to those words. I also found comfort in writing. Sometimes I would write down my thoughts and feelings, pouring out the sadness, anger, and hope onto paper. It helped me make sense of the chaos inside. Despite the slow progress, there were moments of unexpected kindness. My sister, despite everything, tried to make amends. She helped with small chores around the house, brought me tea when I was exhausted, and tried to show me she cared in the only way she knew. It was confusing and painful to see the person who hurt me trying to heal. I was torn between the love of a sister and the betrayal I felt deep inside. One afternoon, my mother invited me for a quiet walk in the park. The sun was warm, the trees gently swaying in the breeze. We talked about the family, about healing, and about hope. "I know this is hard," she said softly, "but sometimes love means finding a way to forgive, even when it hurts." I nodded, but inside, I still felt so unsure. Could love really survive this? Could my family? The future was uncertain, filled with questions I did not yet have answers to. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself living in a strange new world. One where the familiar faces of my family and the places I had once called home felt different. Everything had changed, and nothing would ever be quite the same again. The betrayal of my husband and sister was a wound that would take a long time to heal if it ever truly did. The legal process was moving forward. My husband was officially charged, and I knew that meant he would face the consequences of his actions. There was a small sense of justice in that, though it did little to fill the emptiness I felt inside. The idea of him being taken away, arrested for what he had done, was surreal. I kept imagining the man I had once loved, now behind bars, and it was difficult to reconcile those two very different images. The annulment was in progress, and I focused on that as a way to close the chapter on a marriage that was never meant to be. It was painful to think about how quickly our life together had fallen apart, but it also felt necessary. I needed to protect myself and my future. Counseling sessions continued for the family. They were often raw and emotional, sometimes even chaotic. We worked through anger, pain, and confusion. Sometimes tears flowed freely, other times silence stretched between us. The counselor encouraged us to be patient and honest with each other, to take small steps toward rebuilding trust, if that was possible. My sister remained fragile but determined. She was growing bigger each day, carrying the child that had come from a forbidden love. I could see the fear and hope in her eyes. She was scared of what the future would hold, scared of judgment, scared of raising a child alone, scared of losing the family she loved. One afternoon, I sat with her again, this time in the living room. The light from the window cast a soft glow around us. I looked at her and said, "I don't know what the future will hold for us. I don't know if we will ever be close again. But I want you to know that I hope you will be okay. I want you to be strong." She smiled weakly, reaching out to squeeze my hand. "Thank you. I want that too. I want to make things right, even if it takes time." Our relationship was fragile, but it was there, a thread of hope in the midst of so much pain. At night, I often thought about what my life would look like from now on. I had dreams and plans that had been shattered, but I also had a chance to start over. To build a life based on honesty, respect, and healing. I reminded myself that I was not alone. My family, even with its broken pieces, was still there. Friends offered their support, and I found new strength within myself that I had never known before. The days were not easy. Some moments were filled with tears and heartache, while others brought small joys, a kind word, a laugh, a quiet moment of peace. I began to believe that even after the darkest storms, the sun could rise again. My parents continued to support my sister, respecting her choices while trying to guide her. The debate about the pregnancy was difficult, but ultimately, the decision was hers to make. My father's faith remained a steady presence in the background, offering comfort and hope to all of us. As for me, I focused on healing. I attended therapy alone, learning to process the betrayal and rebuild my sense of self. I discovered strength in forgiveness, not just for them, but for myself. Forgiveness did not mean forgetting what happened or pretending it was okay. It meant releasing the hold that anger and pain had on me, so I could move forward. In time, I began to see a future that, while different from the one I had imagined, held its own kind of promise. A future where I could be happy again, where love could find its way back into my life. Though the scars would always remain, they would be part of my story. A story of pain, yes, but also of courage, resilience, and hope. The betrayal of my husband and sister changed everything, but it did not end me. I was still here, still standing, still ready to face whatever came next.